Well, of course, something you all have been waiting for is the famous money gun. I have more money, so when we're done, I'm happy if anybody wants me to sign it. You know, I have been groomed for this moment in time, and I've been in these markets on some level since 1964. So I guess maybe I'm a little interesting because I have a little more perspective on different things. But one thing I started studying in 1987 were currency life cycles. And so there are repeatable patterns that we see every time. And I know I'm saying to you that we are at the end of this fiat money experiment. And this is why. We're looking at interest rates. And what we're looking at here is trends, long-term trends that were broken. Interest rates are the key control that central bankers have to regulate the rate and speed of inflation. And inflation was positioned into the government-based fiat money. So we can see the long-term trend and we can see how it has been definitively broken. They don't have this tool. Every time they have attempted to raise interest rates, and I don't care where you are in the world, then it creates problems because we had 15 years of zero interest rate policy, which enabled them to grow a tremendous amount of debt. And at the same time that they're growing debt, what are they doing? They're destroying the purchasing power, the value of your money. And we're basically at zero. Now, I couldn't even find a graph on the purchasing power of the Canadian dollar, so they're using purchasing power parity. But look at the terms, so against the US dollar, and look at the purchasing power in terms of goods. So you're really getting like a double whammy. And anybody that is taking Canadian dollars to the US, you can feel it. And we can feel the difference when we take the dollars up here. But this is hidden from you. Well, if there's no purchasing power left, and the key tool that they use to regulate the rate and speed of inflation, well, where do you go with that? That's one thing I rarely hear anybody talk about. So you can talk about the rise in the stocks and the rise in the cryptos and the rise in everything else, but if all you can do is convert that wealth into these dollars, this government-based money, when all confidence is lost in the currency, what do you have left? So make no mistake, this system is irreparably broken and there has to be a reset. And it's not something that I'm waiting for. It's actually something that happened in 2008. And so that's when I started on my personal journey, because I really did not think that I would see this in my lifetime. That's when I started on my personal journey to get into a position where it would not matter. Now, here, how do governments that are desperate, what do? Well, resource nationalization. You see that all over the world. And there are so many different ways that the government can confiscate the gold, confiscate your wealth, and they just talk about it in different terms so that you really don't realize it. But frankly, a rose by any other name, it's still a rose. It doesn't matter. So whether they put on tariffs or what have you, what are we looking at? Canadian mining companies are well aware of the risks associated with operating mining projects in developing countries. However, so what can they do? Impose new taxes, harsher royalty regimes, or even nationalize the projects. But do you think that you're immune in Canada or anywhere else? No, you're not. So let's take a look at some of the names that they call confiscation. Ways to nationalize. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because this is what we're really looking at. Increased taxation is one way that they keep people away from buying gold, and also how they can fill their coffers, because you go, oh, I don't want to pay that tax. But frankly, physical gold is the only way that you can actually protect yourself from all of the devaluation that takes place. Now, what I'm showing you here is a spot gold
contract. And that's all it is. And we all know they can create as much gold that does not nor ever will exist as they want to. And in that way, they can suppress the price. And when you look at it from a technical view, what you're actually looking at is a quadruple top, which almost never ever happens, but it's a clear indication of suppression. And it doesn't really matter. These are the gold mining stocks, right? And you can see a wedge formation that's happening there, which means that there's either going to be a breakout above or a breakdown below. But what I want to show you is what's happening in the physical market, because as long as they can create as much gold as they want to that doesn't exist, they can continually suppress the price, and that's another way that they can confiscate your wealth, because they hide the truth and they lie. They need you to stay inside of their system so that it's easier to steal your wealth. So what you're looking at here are ultra rarities. This is where the 1% can put their wealth. A 1 ounce coin could cost $15 million, and not many people can afford that. But there's your physical market, and look at that substantial breakout, whereas in the gold mining stocks and in the spot gold contract, we haven't gotten a breakout, at least in terms of Canadian dollars. There's your breakout. And this is the one that's more affordable, but still the physical only market. And you can see a definitive breakout there as well. So, what are you going to believe? You're going to believe the lies where they can create as much as they want, or you want to believe the truth? And then you can make your choice on how you want to participate. But this is all about educated choices that put your best interest first. And I think that's really a huge key. So if you're a miner or you're a corporation, well, there are ways to protect your income, protect the wealth that you've already developed, and you can use physical gold that is severely undervalued to do that. And there's a whole strategy around that that's just based on those repeatable patterns. But we all know too, let's see, here we go, that you have to be able to be as self-sufficient and independent as possible, because of all of your wealth is held inside of the system. When they take full control during this next crisis and your fiat money wealth plunges, and they say, well, you have to do this, because that's when they're going to bring out the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, and they'll say, this will save you. No, this will enslave you. So you want to make sure that you have every choice possible. So food, you guys know my mantra, if you've been watching me anyway: food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, or shelter, and the one that I really want to talk about, frankly, is community. And I want to explain to you why I do what I do. And I think a lot of you will be able to relate to this. But a number of years ago, I went through a very hard time, and I was actually depressed for about 3 years, and I was absolutely at the bottom. And so this particular year, and I was 38 when that happened, when I went to France for 3 months, I bought a bike, I brought a tent, I brought a backpack with all these things that I needed, because I felt I had a huge failure, and I'm not really used to failure, and it kind of knocked me on my butt. I'm not kidding. But I have 2 daughters, and it was important for me to get healthy for them. So what I decided to do was go someplace where I could not speak the language and I did not know anybody, so that there were absolutely no demands on me and I could start to get healthy. I will be talking in the future a lot more about that experience, but I had lost my purpose. I didn't know what my purpose was at that point, because I had done what I thought I was supposed to do, and it was a big fat fail. I didn't really realize that that's what I needed, to be humbled, to understand. But this was toward the end of the trip, and I was there almost 3 months. And I was camping along the side of the road, and I was eating what I found along the side of the road, which would typically, mostly raspberries, occasionally apples, and my favorite were wild strawberries. And being a female, there was something that came up that I thought that I needed. And I had about 4 francs left. And I went into this little village and I went into this store and there was a woman there. She was the proprietress. And I thought, awesome, she's going to understand this. And by the time I got there, my grammar was probably really awful, but I could make myself understood. So I went and I picked out what I thought that I needed. And it was like 1 franc more than what I had. And the franc was nothing anyway. And I thought, okay. Took it up to the counter, explained the circumstance, and she wouldn't sell it to me. And I had this headlamp that was worth a lot more than that, and she wouldn't barter with me. And I left that store and I was passing judgment on her. I would never do that, blah, 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 blah. And then I said to myself, wait a minute. You got plastic, you got toilet paper. This is not insurmountable. And it's not your job to judge. It's just your job to be who you are. Off I go. About 2 hours later, I go over this rise and I see this massive field of wild strawberries. And that was my favorite, right? So I parked my bike. And remember, I'd been camping and bathing in streams. I don't think I looked very good. Probably didn't smell very good. But I parked my bike and I go up and I ate my fill of the wild strawberries. I put some in plastic for my dinner that night. And I saw that there was a white car down at the bottom. And I thought to myself, why aren't they up here eating these wild strawberries? They're like the best things you could ever put in your mouth. So I did what was normal for me since I had my fill. I picked a couple handfuls of wild strawberries and I went down to the car, and the woman was on the passenger side. And she rolled down her window and I asked them if they'd like some wild strawberries. And she said, no, thank you. But would you like a cheese sandwich? And I thought, cha-ching, protein, right? And I said, I would love a cheese sandwich, thank you. And they had a picnic basket in the trunk of their car, and they gave me the cheese sandwich. And then she said to me, would you like a cool drink of water? Well, I would fill my water bottles up in the artesian wells as I would pass through the villages, and they would get warm. And I said, well, yes, I would like a cool drink of water, thank you. And they gave me that. And then she said to me, would you like an apricot? Well, I'm telling you, you only saw apricots at roadside stands, and I didn't have any money for them. And I said, well, I would love an apricot, but why are you doing this? It's not necessary. I was trying to find out why I was on this planet. I was asking, and I didn't know. And when that woman responded, it was like she looked me deep in the eyes, like into my soul. And she said to me, you want to share what you have with us. We want to share what we have with you. And in that moment, I'm getting chills. I always get chills when I tell this story because it changed my life. And I realized that the reason why I was on this planet, in fact, the reason why we are all on this planet, is to share the gifts that we have been given. And in that instant, I found my purpose. And I'm so grateful. So that's why I do all of the work that I do, because I work for you guys. That's who I work for. I don't work for any company. I don't even work for my company. I work for you. And that's why I'm so committed to this. And that's why I want to talk about community. Because just recently, in August, I went to Australia and I did 3 shows in Australia. And the first show I did my normal, dog and pony and all of that. And of course, everybody thought how wonderful it was and all that. But I knew it didn't really quite feel right to me. And the other 2, I threw out all the materials that I had brought. And instead, what I started talking about was community. Because we've got a huge battle ahead of us. if we allow those that are in power now to remain in power and just say, well, what can I do about it? Right? Then what we're going to have is we're going back to feudalism. And you're going to have a few people that have everything and everybody else that owns it. And the system is designed through inflation to confuse you and keep you inside of the system because it is so much easier to steal your wealth that way. But if we come together in community, there are way more of us than there are of them. And it's really simple because we vote with our wallets and we vote with our purses. So how do you fight this peacefully? You buy physical gold and silver and do all those other parts of the mantra. You make yourself as independent and self-sufficient as possible because this is what we need. Food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community and shelter. And community is the most important piece because we are at the end of this cycle. And they're just holding things together until they can get everything set up to transition us. And they will use a crisis. And I can say this here, I haven't been able to say it online, but I can say this here, that the pandemic was a test to see how easily we would all fall in line. And if you go to the Wuhan website and you read some of their documentation from 20 years ago, they've been developing that bug and they knew it would transfer. They knew all about this. Now, I can't prove that it was released, but the timing was incredible because 2019, the money market, so we're thinking, oh, this is savings. What a safe thing this is, right? The money markets froze and the Fed and the other central bankers had to do an about face and pump a whole lot more of this crap into the system so that people wouldn't realize how vulnerable they all were, right? Don't believe their lies. And because we are out of time, I mean, I knew definitively, and I've been talking about it since then, in 2008, that's when the system really died. I saw it. I didn't think I would see it in my lifetime. I know how deeply I research things. I've been doing this on some level for I'm 69 now, so 59 years. And I started creating all of that mantra piece. I became an urban farmer. I wasn't even a gardener. My sisters were, but I wasn't. So, it took a lot over these years to get as prepared and ready as I am today, but I don't think you guys have the luxury of time. And that makes community that much more important because the purpose of community, and I look at the whole globe as a big community as well, is to come together and support each other. And it really is that simple because each one of us brings different gifts to the table. And I'm getting chills again. I know this is really what I'm supposed to be talking about more than anything else because this is really the only hope that we have is to come together locally so that you've got some, go out and meet your farmers. There's going to be people that produce food, that manage water, that do all of those different parts of the mantra in your community. Go out, meet them. Volunteer. If anybody comes to my urban farm, they walk away with lots of produce and a relationship and community, right? So you want to make sure you have that food, water, etc., all of those pieces and parts. But we have to also come together in a global community. Now, I used Occupy Wall Street. Do you guys remember what happened after 2008? This was a movement that spread around the world. The problem is they didn't know what they should be focusing on. That was really the death of the system. And they didn't have a leader that understood that. And so it lasted for a reasonably long time, but it eventually petered out because they didn't have the focus. Well, I've been studying currency life cycles since 1987, and you always have to ask yourself, if not me, who? And if not now, when? And the only guarantee that I can ever give you guys is that I will show up and I will do the work. But the work really is in building community. That is the single most important thing that I bring to the table, because I see that. I see that. There's a reason why I'm here today, and it's not to do business. I can't do business in Canada at this point, right? It's because what I'm doing is building community. And my good friend Andy Sheckman asked me yesterday, well, why did you go to Australia and New Zealand? You can't do business over there. And I said to him, it's to build a global community. And I don't think I really quite knew that when I first got there, but boy, oh boy, did I learn it in those last two things. And every single time I talk about community, chills just run through my body. So I know that's my purpose. That's my purpose. The gold and the silver is critically important, because if you don't hold it, you don't own it, and it should be apparent to every single person. They can steal it from you, they can take it from you, they can enslave you. So you've got to have that foundation to give yourself the independence. But because we are definitely running out of time, and I hope it's apparent to everybody with what's happening in the 10-year Treasury market, which we've been sold as the deepest and most liquid pool, but the lack of liquidity in the foundation of the global economy has been going like this. Okay, it's a very thinly traded market anymore, and that's the foundation. So if you're in a house and thank you so much. You're in a house and the foundation is shaking like this, are you going to stay in that house? No, you're going to get out. And how can you get out? You can buy physical gold and physical silver and hold it. And that is seriously the most. It's critical for your foundation because it brings you choices. But, where we are in this trend cycle, we've got to come together in community. We've got to learn some new skills, maybe. I can lay irrigation, because when I started my urban farm, it was just me. Now I have built an incredible community around me, including Jacqueline, who's been with me for quite some time and really helped with a lot of things. In community, we do a lot of community service, but I look at these events as a way for me to spread that message in a much better way, because we're looking each other in the eyes, aren't we? We are all in this together. So I've been notified that the speaker after me canceled. And that's good, because that means we have more time, right? And so that means I could talk about anything you want. And here's another mic. If people would like to come down the center aisle and ask questions, I am very happy to answer them.
How much time do you think we have till CBDCs are implemented?
Well, it could actually be as early as maybe this spring or summer, because there are things that are shifting inside of the government. Yes, you are welcome to all of these, and Jacqueline has a Sharpie, so I'm happy to autograph any of this money that you want to. So, I think it could be as early as... See, they've set up all of the accounts, and they've got, even though they're saying they're still examining things, do you believe them?
No.
No, I don't believe them either. So we could see a crisis as early as this spring, running into summer, because the banking system is definitely falling apart. The bond market is definitely falling apart. You've got just these huge walls of debt all over the world that are coming due and have to be rolled over into a higher interest rate environment. So I think that it is possible, and this is beyond my control, so hey, I could be wrong, But I think that we could see a crisis as early as this spring, going into summer, and I think they're all ready. If they can create enough panic, here we go, look at this. Think what happened in 2020 when they gave, no, we're not going to bail out the banks this time. Well, they did. But we're going to give you a whole bunch of money. And do you remember them saying how much easier it would be if everybody had an account? And rather than having to send out checks or do all of this funny stuff, they could just push a button and push those CBDCs into the system. So I don't think we have much time. And that's why this message is really so much more urgent. Because I can't tell you it's going to be Tuesday morning at 8:35, but it could be. Although it'll probably happen Friday afternoon after the close. Yes, exactly.
Yesterday in the speaker hall, there was a panel that was, they got a discussion going on into Canadian real estate. And I forget which guy, but the milkshake guy, he started to mention there was a lag. And he mentioned the LIBOR rate was going away, but and then he was kind of interrupted. But he was onto something where this LIBOR rate, going to SOFR.
Let's talk about that.
I'm not sure if this affected the Canadians, but he was saying it affected the contracts, and it was coming. Anyway, there might be a crisis in the middle of this year in the Canadian real estate sector.
I think it's much bigger than that. And you're right. The transition from LIBOR, the interest rate benchmark, into SOFR, which is a newly created interest rate benchmark. They have a synthetic LIBOR, so those contracts don't explode, because they have not been able to figure out, even with some jury rigging on the rates, the SOFR and LIBOR have different rates. And so what happens when interest rates go up, the market value of the bonds or the debt instruments, so the mortgages and everything else, I mean, it's all debt anyway, goes down. So they jury rigged it so that it looks like, wow, look at that. They made this transition of who even knows how much, 16 trillion, 100 trillion, all the derivative bets on top of that, quadrillions. What's above quadrillion? Sextillions? They're zeros. That's what they are. I think that the real estate crisis is in a global basis, but I think it's also tied to the bond market. And absolutely, LIBOR so far, oh my gosh, people don't realize. They keep things hidden so that there's distance between them and you don't equate one to the other. But yeah, I'm going to announce something to you that I can only say that we've got some major surprises in store, and we're going to be rolling those out. So you guys know my name, Lynette Zang, right? Okay, and Jacqueline has some cards, but I don't know if you have a lot. Do you have a lot? Okay, at any rate, that's how you can find me, Lynette Zang, and just do a search on me. And anything, and honestly, I really am about education. So I know I've gone into some classrooms. You can do anything virtually, right? So wherever you are in the world, if you're in some kind of group, you're in some kind of class, and they want me to talk about any of these topics that are related to money and life cycles and prepping and all of that, just let Jacqueline know. I'm very happy. She does all my scheduling. She points me in a direction and I go there. But I want you to know that I am here to be of service, and I am here to build this global community. That is the single most important, aside from my children, the single most important thing to me. It really is, and that's my focus.